Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Zero number 362AA. This is an automatic door bottom. Simply put, that's what this is. Automatic door bottoms are devices that I'll probably refer to them as elegant several times in this video, that seal the bottom of the door. So that's what they do. They do so in an automatic fashion, and they do so in such a way where the housing is the drop bar is retracted up into its housing. I'm holding it upside down naturally when it's not utilized, making them elegant. Now, the 362 is one of several different models from Zero when it comes to heavy-duty sill protection, automatic door bottoms. They have mortised types, they have semi-mortised types, they have surface mount types. They have those types with different inserts as well that might be more or less appropriate for your application. They have several different inserts that go with those, so that's important to know. They have models or variations of these that are going to contend with acoustical properties and requirements, specialty applications of how they mount onto the door. They also have an insert that provides for the provision of airflow under the door. Why you would want that is if you have a hotel room and you've got a unit on the inside of the room, that unit's only source of fresh air is really under the door, so they will make a automatic door bottom that has notches in it to allow that airflow, but still seal the bottom of the door from light, things of that nature. So Zero is my go-to automatic door bottom when someone says they want, in my opinion, the best. I like the robust nature of the material. I like the thickness of the aluminum that's used. I like the generous sizing on the neoprene insert that is done and used in their material. I like that. I like Zero because they're going to afford a clear anodized aluminum finish, which is the AA in this part number, a D finish for a dark bronze anodized, and a G finish for gold anodized. I like the fact that there is a significant amount of engineering thought that has been put into the development of their products, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. And as I look at the link below this video to the product brochure, it reminds me of how well thought out and engineered their product line is. Now, let's move forward. The 362 that I have here features this neoprene insert that you see here with that hollow tube and these ridges that are down here on the bottom, and it's inserted down into the drop bar channel here. Now, what will be a little bit more difficult to take note of, only because it's hard to see it on the camera, is at the tip of my finger here, you see a black circle. At the tip of my finger here, you see a black circle as well. That has an inserted rubber strip that is L-shaped. With that bulb so that it sits into or fits into that profile of the extrusion on both sides. So it does properly, of course, look like this. So what happens is when the drop bar drops, and then when the door is open and it comes back up into its housing, those pieces of rubber strips are what are called the anti-squeak rubber. That's an example of well thought out engineering. A complaint, while I refuse to really consider it a complaint, when given all of the advantages of an automatic door bottom that we'll get to in a moment, is this. They make a sound when you open the door because that's the drop bar snapping back up into the housing. And indeed, they do make a sound. You do hear it. There's no way to contend with the fact that there is a sound. Zero has thought that problem out and given a response to that where you really don't hear a sound. Now you hear it there a little bit naturally, If there was no anti-squeak rubber in there, it'd be far more metallic and quite frankly irritating to hear. So they've done a real good job to mute that sort of sound. Not only that, but the size and the surface area of the ridges on the neoprene and the fact that it's hollow will help with sound attenuation, or attenuating sound, retarding the transmission of sound. The 362 is a specific model. This has two sister models, the 360, the 361, and the 362. And if you recall, there are three mounts that I had mentioned. Well, there's three. Mortised, semi-mortised, or recessed, semi-recessed, and surface mount. The 362 is specifically a semi-recessed mount versus the surface mount, which looks all but identical, and then the mortised mount, which looks quite different. Now, there's a link below this video to the product catalog I had mentioned earlier that you can pull up and just review the horizontal line of 360, 362, and 361. You'll immediately see that. The mortised style is literally where you're going to install it into a routed channel into the bottom of a wood door. The advantage of that is that it's thoroughly concealed and you never see the hardware, except if you got on the ground and looked underneath the door when the door was closed. And that's very commonly seen in hotel rooms. You're not going to see exposed hardware like that on a suite door in a hotel. However, that's the second most common. The most common version is the surface mount, just literally where you apply it onto the face of the door on the push side between the stops is where it mounts, and that's the most common one. The downside of that is that it's surface mounted and you see it. Again, the upside of the mortised style is that you don't see the hardware at all. The model between the two is a semi-recessed, which is the 362. Now, this is the same as the surface mount, except that the surface mount is going to feature panhead sheet metal screws rather than flathead, and the body will not be countersunk for the screw holes. This model happens to be countersunk on both sides, so you could literally flip it around. But the drawing does not indicate that it's countersunk on both sides from the factory, and as a result, when you're ordering the material, you are asked to provide the hand of the door, and there is a link below this video to the handing chart where you can review what the hand of a door is. So that's the kind of reason that you would need to tell us the hand. If Zero is going to predictably and reliably manufacture these with countersinks on both sides, the hand obviously doesn't matter because you can literally change this and flip it around. The surface mount is the same concept. The mortised style, absolutely the same concept. They are, you're right, they are reversible. Well, they're non-handed, and they can be reversed if you needed to. We ask for the handing because I have found in the past that I've sent a PO to Zero and they have said, what is the hand of the door? And I said, the item is reversible. Don't worry about it. Send anything you want. And they say, just tell me the hand of the door. So that's why we ask for it. There could be something else that's at play that I'm not aware of why they need to know the hand as well. But the truth of the matter is it's good knowledge for us to possess at the time of the order, knowing the hand of the door, because you might order a Zero automatic door bottom, but then order another piece of hardware that's unrelated to a Zero piece of weather stripping. And knowing the hand of the door, we're able to better understand exactly what's happening on the opening and attempting to avoid a possible, perhaps, mistake, things of that nature. Okay. Now, the semi-mortise, or semi-recessed, is the 362. So the mortised and the surface mount, those are clear. Now the semi-mortise, that's literally where you take the door and you cut a notch into the door, if we're looking at a cross section. So it looks like that. The advantage of that is that it takes the hardware away from being on the surface of the door where it could be more prone to contact with other things. Let's say it's a hotel and it's a cleaning crew. You really don't want that cleaning cart or a vacuum cleaner or anything or a foot from clients hitting the hardware. The semi-recess seems to get it out of the way a little bit. Plus, I believe it's more elegant looking as well because it's utterly flush with the face of the door. You're literally going to route a notch into the face of the door, basically equal to the thickness of the housing and then the height of the unit as well to accommodate the exact requirements. Those requirements being 1.9, and that's a hallmark of 0. They're quite specific with their dimensions. About 1 5/16 tall, about 15/16 wide. Okay, and thick. Now, if you are doing an existing wood door, you're going to want to maybe rethink using a semi-recess because as you mortise the bottom of the door, I find it easy to do this sort of prep. You're just going to put your template straight edge, clamp it down, and then use your plunge router and just work that door all the way across to the depth as needed for the thickness of the body. Existing door, if you're going to cut that much out of a door, you're probably going to run into the subcore of the door. Now keep in mind, you're routing out half of the door thickness. So you're going to get into other things. Particle board, okay? If it's a fire-rated door, you would completely destroy the Tectonite material that is the rail of the door. So the short version of this is it's really not permissible to field modify a door that's not been set up originally to handle the installation of a semi-recess, because you might be compromising the integrity of the door. Let's say if it's a stile and rail door, you might run into a lag or some sort of manufacturing portion of the door. There's certainly ways to work around a door that's not been manufactured for it. I suppose you could re-rail a door, cut the door rail out, pack it back in with substantial material that works for the construction of the door regardless. The typical construction of a wood door for these, however, and it's not impossible to see them on metal doors, but that's not very often, is where the door has been ordered specifically manufactured for this so that the proper blocking can be done or the proper rail height can be done in the bottom of the door. Certainly if it's a non-fire rated door, but especially if it's a fire rated door. Okay, if you're going to do it in the field, that's easy enough. That's just some router work. If you have any questions on how to do that, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to go over it with you as you're getting to the installation point of the item. Now, how you order this happens to be a 36-inch length. It's not, and of course 36 inches is a common size, but it's not typical that you're going to have a 36-inch net length requirement if you have a 3-foot door. Now this is going to be mounted on the push side of the door and will be mounted flush with the face of the door. So now it's not measured like a surface mount, which is push side of the door between the stops. It's now measured based on what's the width of the door on the small side if it's beveled, and that would be about the size that you want. That door, if it's beveled, will probably be a 1/16 of an inch difference, so you might want to order it, however, either small or large, and either install it or finesse it with a hand file back to give it that small amount of work bevel, but it's not even a 1/16 of an inch. If you have a 3-foot, here's a scenario, a 36-inch wide hollow metal frame, just for ease of analogy. You've got a wood door, let's just say it's 35 and 13/16. I might be tempted to order this 35 and 3/4 or 35 and 11/16, okay, assuming it's beveled, and that would be the net size. If it was the same application and surface mounted, you now would measure between the stops, 36-inch, assuming you have 5/8 projection on your stops, that's 36 less 5/8 and less 5/8, and then less 1/8 of an inch for a surface mount model, so you're going to be at 34 and 5/8 is what a net length would be. So that's how the difference applies when you're dealing with surface versus semi-mortise. or mortise for that matter. Mortise is the same sort of treatment in terms of a net size. If there's any questions on how to order the right size, feel free to reach out to us. I am not a fan of sending out 36-inch units for the client to cut down in the field, because you're going to note that there's this large brass bolt or nut that's here, bolt, and you'll note that there's not one on the other side. Well, that's by design. The bolt side is always the hinge side of the door, always. This is always the lock side of the door. Now here's why. When the door closes, this bolt is projecting, but when it closes, this will make contact with the frame, and as it makes contact with the frame and you continue to push the door closed, this has nowhere to go but in, and as you goes in, it drops the bottom down. And that's how an automatic door bottom works. Now you'll see that it drops down unevenly, and that's normal and typical and common, and I can tell you that sound is quite muted from the standard model. Now, if my thumb represents the sill, as you push it down, my thumb will restrict it from dropping any further, allowing the bottom to first drop down and then knife down so that it will contour itself to the actual pitch or slope of the sill. Obviously not a wavy sill it can accommodate itself over, but the bottom line is it will make contact and then drop, knifing its way down. Now that's by design as well, elegantly, because you want the hinge side to tip down, because when the bolt or the plunger makes contact with the frame, the outside portion, the lock side of the door, it's not in the 100% closed position. It's still marginally open. And by the fact that this end will not be dropping down yet, you don't want to be dragging that leading edge of the bottom along the floor or the sill. Now that leads into another reason these are elegant. When the door is open, the seal is tucked up. That allows you to not drag it on a floor. That allows you to not run it over a shoe that's been left on the inside of the door, or a rug, you know, natural sorts of things. You may not want to have a door sweep that's rubbing over your polished or your semi-gloss Brazilian cherry wood floor. You know, that sort of scenario. It makes helping accommodate disparate floor surfaces easier as well, because this model has a 1-inch maximum drop. Imagine if you've got a wood floor condition, you've got your door, but then your sill does something funny over here where you've got a distance that you have to mitigate. An automatic door bottom can help mitigate that, whereas a door sweep simply cannot, because it's fixed in its size and doesn't travel up and down at all. And it's for those reasons that they're elegant. Well, they're also elegant because they're so incredibly long-lasting in terms of the seal, because there's no friction. All this thing is doing is pushing down on the sill. Okay. Now there is a link below there is a link below this video to the installation instructions, which go over it quite clearly and succinctly, and the rest in the next portion of this video is going to lead to the installation instructions. So basically, once you've got your automatic door bottom set to the right length, if you're going to trim it, you'll want to take note of the installation instructions, or you're going to want to stay away from the set screw, which is part and parcel of the interior connections of the material, 1 inch away from that. So you'll be able to trim this unit down a good 4 inch, it looks like. Only trimming from the lock side, never from the adjusting brass nut side. After you've prepped the door as we've discussed, you're simply going to attach it to the door, hang your door. I like, before you close it or before you attach it, turn that clockwise to draw the drop bar in, so that when you close the door, there's really no contact. Test the door. Look down and see the drop. Counterclockwise, turn the bolt about 1 or 2 turns. Test the operation again and get to a point where it's making contact. Not undue force, because that means there's too much tension on the spring, meaning that the bolt has to travel further than natural to get it to retract back up. Meaning, when you open the door, you don't want to drag that H bar, this bar, along your floor at all. As soon as you open the door, you want that starting to pop back up into the housing. Okay, that's how that's going to work. Screws are included flathead naturally because it is a semi-recess, as mentioned earlier. Optimum clearance between the door bottom and the sill is 3/8 of an inch. This has a maximum drop of 1 inch, but 3/8 is where they like to see the total effectiveness of the profile of the insert material, 3/8 of an inch. You're going to have end caps that are included with these. The blank one obviously goes on the lock side. The one with the hole will be for the brass nut side. You will have screws to finish that installation off into those holes that are, holes that are there and there. You will have a small little plastic mute that will snap into the brass nut in that little hole, and that's so that if you have a wood frame, every time you're closing the door, that brass nut's not going to gouge a divot into the wood frame. That piece of nylon tip works to eliminating that. Should you develop a long-term problem, maybe fatigue of that brass tip, find yourself a little tiny piece of aluminum and just screw that. Or even better, get yourself like a number 12 short wood screw, drill it, countersink it into the frame, and let the head of the screw and the head of the brass nut make contact with each other. That would be a good way to do that as well. The name Zero is synonymous with weather stripping, and as I said initially, synonymous in my opinion with the highest quality of material. Even though there's a lead time, even though the stuff is costly, the fact that Zero's name is synonymous with STC rated equipment when it comes to perimeter gasketing, they're the go-to. So if they attenuate sound with their products very well, I'm going to tip my hat to their ability to be able to attenuate the transmission of heat, cold, moisture, critters getting underneath the door, like in Arizona. Hey Rich, I've got to keep the scorpions out from underneath my door. You know, I like to go with the heavy duty stuff in that regard, and clients seem to agree with it as well. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all the Zero products that we sell, a link to the manufacturer's website, along with a link to the catalog, the summary of Zero if you're looking for well-engineered, high-quality weather stripping. That's the catalog you're going to want to familiarize yourself with. If you have any questions on the Zero 362AA automatic door bottom or any other Zero product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.